Austin Barbour is with us, partner of Clearwater Group. Austin, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, man, you hear those? I'm doing fine. You hear those, that cut. I don't know. Did you hear that cut?
Well, I did, and I also saw another one yesterday from Jackson, Mississippi, which, we're sitting in Jackson right now. I live in Jackson. There was a kid that looked like he was in middle school who was going to graduation, and he and his two siblings walked outside, and the mama was taking a picture, and all of a sudden you hear gunshots in the middle of the day. So it's a terrible situation. It's a terrible state that we live in many of these big cities, even in red states, as you just said.
I don't want to turn this racist or anything like that into a racial conversation, but to the point where we always, like in Mission, Mississippi, and God bless Nettie, I love him to death, but we're talking about we have to have this dialogue on both sides. Sometimes when we have this, it always gets into a lopsided. But somewhere down the line, you have to have this conversation that white people are trying to help. I mean, the U.S. District Judge Henry Wingate dismissed Mississippi Supreme Court Justice Mike Randolph from the NAACP's federal lawsuit. You know that, the HB 1020. Yeah. And I don't know if did you read the comments from Chief Justice?
No, I didn't read his. I did read Judge Wingate's.
Well, here's just a little bit. I want to go through the whole thing, but Jackson's crime problem is sweltering. Here's what he said. Undisputed, suffocating. FBI crime statistics tell the sorrowful story. In 2020, Jackson's reported 130 homicides, record number at that time. 2021, Jackson surpassed that record with at least 155 reported homicides, the highest per capita murder rate in the nation, higher than Birmingham, Atlanta, Detroit, even Chicago. 2022, even with a 14% decline in homicides, Jackson reported 138 homicides that year. And he goes on to say, look, people are trying to help out there, and then they want to fight this in court.
Well, I tell you, black people, white people, brown people, I'm going to talk specifically about Jackson, are concerned about this, are trying to do this, but it's a failure of leadership. I live in Jackson. My wife and I are raising our two teenagers in Jackson, and we made the decision because we, where our schools are, where our church is, close to work. It's the decision that we made, but it's a failure of leadership at the local level on crime. And until our local officials in Jackson get serious about it, led by our mayor, nothing's going to happen. So, I'm so hopeful that 1090 will become law and we can get Capitol Police all throughout Jackson. That'll be good for every single person who lives in Jackson, except the criminals.
If there was some consideration, and again, I'll say this, it's not so much black and white as it is Democrat and Republican. It really isn't, in my mind. Because I'm telling you, if we had some of the people that we've interviewed over the years here who are African-American Republicans, conservatives, even those who don't want to sign their name as Republicans but have moved over to independent, if those political people were in office in Jackson, Mississippi, with the political ideology of conservatives, we would have a totally different city.
Yeah, well, but I mean, there are black Democrats who know we've got to do something about the crime problem. But again, it is the current elected officials.
How many are they?
Well,
because when you start looking to even the people that you think are moderate, they were on board in the last legislative session trying to beat the hell out of people for even proposing these bills.
Well, all that matters is who is running the city right now. Those are the ones who are making the decision. Those are the ones who are who have crippled JPD and made them sadly ineffective in many situations. And we just cannot. This is a capital city. It cannot stay this way. And I pray that the court moves fast on this.
And another good point on this one is to the fact when you reelect a guy that has this dismal record.
Yes.
And you see how many people actually turned out to take charge of their city. It's just minuscule.
It is, but
it is scary.
That election's in 2025, and hopefully there'll be a big turnout, and change will happen.
Turning our attention to the national scene, the president's going to be in court today, or is he going to be there physically?
I think so. I think that's what I heard this morning.
Here's my take on this, and you dabbled in this for a long time. My take on this one is this is probably the most serious that he has ever faced because of a couple of things. It's federal. It's all. I'm saying to his political career, not so much. I doubt very seriously that they'd lock him up, even though if they charged him with everything, he's in prison for 100 years, and he'll probably live that out because he's in good shape. Well, what's your thoughts?
I'm sorry. You're
you
exactly
think it's
right.
as serious, more serious than? Do you think Trump fans or Trump supports in his base need to really be worried about this one?
I think so. Look, I'm not a lawyer, but I read probably half of the indictment last night. It's just kind of like reading a book. It's you don't have to be a lawyer or some super smart guy, thank goodness for me, to sort of understand what the case is that the federal prosecutors are making. There's no question that this is the most serious of charges that he has faced. Mm-hmm. And look, trying to figure out the politics of this is like trying to figure out a Rubik's Cube with your eyes closed. It's nearly impossible. So, we'll just have to see what happens. But I was reading a New York Times story this morning before I walked in, really because they've got good reporters. They're as biased as, most of the national media. But when you come in and you sort of dig into some of the stats that they put, and they were talking about a recent CBS poll that said only 7% of Republicans say that this issue will change where they're going to vote, how they're going to vote. That is, as of right now, that is the initial sort of take from Republicans when they're called by a pollster. The concerning thing, and this has to be an issue that the Trump campaign are concerned about, is 46% of Republicans said the same, suggesting a potential fracture in the party. And what is the same they're saying is that, what 69% of independents said is that they would consider Mr. Trump's possession of documents about nuclear systems a national security risk. So you know how this is. You're going to get your news from wherever you get your news, whether it's SuperTalk or Fox News or Twitter or whatever it is. So as this story starts to unfold and normal people start to talk about, hey, this is what's in the indictment, that's when this gets troublesome for President Trump, if people can really start to understand just how serious the charges are in there, if the prosecutors can prove their case.
I think everybody said he has to bring his A-team here and leave nobody behind because this one's going to be real serious about it. I don't think a lot of people put enough importance on the position that Ronald McDaniel has as head of the GOP, because she's kind of not so much the gatekeeper but the organizer. There's a lot of things going on. Do you think she's doing a good job on this one? Because, wading through this primary is not going to be easy.
When you say on this one, what do you mean?
Well, I'm just talking, how do you handle this at that level?
Well, I don't know that this is necessarily on her. I mean, she and the RNC have a presidential primary that they have to put on, and I'm sure you're aware of this. They have made the qualifications for those who are running for president to stand on a debate stage pretty dadgum hard. Essentially what they said is, if you're going to qualify for a debate, you remember 8 years ago, it was basically you had to 1%, but this year it's 40,000 individual donors plus 1% or higher in these early states. So that's going to make it really difficult for who's going to be actually on the debate stage.
Listen, let me end this segment with this one. Scott Adams, in one of my interesting tweets overnight, Scott Adams said, when a sitting president with low popularity doesn't even need to campaign for re-election, that's the reddest of flags. Let that sink in. Back with more, and Austin Barbour coming up next. Spending some time just jawing politics is Austin Barbour, and he can do it and do quite a good job on this. There was this story out here, and I'm hitting you cold with this one, and I'm not sure if you've seen this. Is it Michael? Yeah, Michael Goldberg with the AP had a story out a few days ago, and I think this has the potential of going nationally. A Mississippi civil rights lawyer was arrested Saturday after filming a traffic stop conducted by officers from a police department. She is suing in federal court, her attorneys say. Colleen Jefferson is the president of Julian. It's a civil rights organization that filed a federal lawsuit last year against the Lexington Police Department on behalf of a group of city residents. Michael Carr, Jefferson's attorney, told the AP that she was arrested late Saturday evening after she filmed officers after they pulled somebody over. This is an epidemic on social media. Have you seen these people who are filming? And I think in most cases what's happening in the court of law is the city's going to have to pay some money for it. Lexington, ultimately, if she goes through with this thing all the way through, and I'm not sure she's still in jail or not. She's reduced, or she refused bail at one point. But, I mean, it's a story that, with her connections and everything, could go nationally.
Well, in a small town like Lexington and Holmes County that doesn't have any money, so, it is an epidemic. And listen, people do have the right to turn their phone on, record, as long as you're not interfering with what the officer is doing, what their responsibility and their job is doing. Yep. They do have that right to do it, but it's just become a gotcha game. And I have not seen this story. I have not seen the video. It sounds like maybe she pulled over. Somebody was getting, arrested or pulled over, and then she decides she's going to become a camera person and film it. Yep. And obviously, again, without reading the story, she did something to interfere with what the officer was doing, and we just can't do it. There's enough pressure on these police officers, particularly in small towns with no backup and not enough training, probably as well, to do their job.
Absolutely, and that's the key that I've mentioned over and over. I think it's unfair to them, the men and women, black or white, doesn't matter, in these police departments, sheriff's departments, highway patrol, whatever it happens to be across America, that they're not given both the mental and physical training as equal importance and updated. Some of the guys have been on the road for, 15, 20 years. It's a whole new world out there.
I agree.
And they're being taxed every single day. And some of these people, just like Antifa, they are so professional in trying to get you to lose your cool. Because they know at the end of the day, it's money. Yeah,
but this goes back to local leadership. What is the priority for the mayor of that town, the mayor of the town that we're in right now? Is the priority I'm going to find as much money in the budget as I possibly can to pay these police officers as much as I can to get the best qualified candidates, and then find additional money to make sure they are trained in a way that they'll go do the best job to protect and serve. And
good point.
That's that, and that government, that priority's just not there. It's not in Jackson. I know that's not what you wanted to talk about, but
it is. It's not. But it hits the police department, fire departments, everybody else, just like in any other sector, because they're having a hard time filling good positions.
That's right.
Positions with good people. Let's go back to your thoughts, overview from your viewpoint of the elections. I was noticing on the Daily Journal, one of the headlines was Elvis's cousin. I'm not making this up because I mentioned it yesterday or the day before or the last time, that it seems like every time a report is on Brandon Presley, they connect it with Elvis. I'm sure they think that that's going to make a difference. It might make a difference, I'm not sure. But
or an editor may just be having fun. The only time he'll ever be able to say Elvis's cousin. I don't know.
Your thoughts on the election?
Look, I think Tate Reeves is definitively the favorite in this race. Mm-hmm. I think his margin against Jim Hood in 2019 was 4.5, maybe 5 points. Look, Brandon Presley is a completely different candidate than Jim Hood. But Jim Hood had won, I think it was 3 times statewide, and obviously Brandon Presley has not. This is the difficult thing when you're a Democrat running statewide in Mississippi, and you know this, Paul, and this has been like this since I ran Roger Wicker's first campaign in 2008 for the U.S. Senate, and we ran against Ronnie Musgrove. Yep. They need money. There's not enough money from Democrat donors in Mississippi to efficiently and effectively fund their campaign, so they have to go get money from the National Democrat Party. And what happens when you do that? Well, you're going to get smacked in the face with it. You're taking money from California, from New York, all these people who have a different ideology than voters in Mississippi, and that's the exact same situation that Brandon Presley finds himself in right now.
Yeah, but when you do that, they don't want to hear the guy they're invested in talk about pro-choice.
Yes. No, they don't want to hear him talking about trying to be moderate on abortion.
Right.
They don't want to hear him talking about, moderate on any issue. They want him to toe the company line. I know what you meant.
Pro-life, not
That's
pro-choice.
Right. I know what you meant. So that is the difficult dynamic when you're trying to run a winning campaign as a Democrat in Mississippi, and that's what Brandon Presley's trying to do right now. Look, he's a really good retail politician. Mm-hmm. He's got his bucket of votes up in Northeast Mississippi, but what I think he's probably finding out is Tate Reeves has done as well in rural Mississippi, as anybody in a long time in a tough race, probably since Haley ran in 2003. So that's a difficult it's a difficult puzzle for Presley to put together, which is why Governor Reeves is the favorite in this race. But look, that doesn't mean he's going to win by 15 points. It's a single-digit kind of scenario, that we're looking at, in my opinion.
Well, and you've got to be worried about this. Anybody, as far as GOP is concerned, what's the turnout going to be? Because, if you go by what we had in the last election, it was just dismal. Almost record-breaking dismal.
Yeah, and you just don't know. The good news is at least there is it's so hard to predict turnout, Paul. Yeah. It just is. So,
let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Shane Quick exited, as you know, and we had the Democrats out there who were saying, we're going to cleanse the roster for Brandon Presley, so he's by himself now. As far as the lieutenant governor's race, how is that shaping up as far as the Republicans are concerned when you look between Chris McDaniels and Delbert Hosemann?
Yeah, well, there's
going to be an interesting race.
No, it is. It definitely is. I'm sitting here looking at so we're less than 2 months. Today's June 13th. I think that election is August the 8th, right. Something like that. I have always said that in that race, McDaniel has a real shot. I think Hosemann's the favorite in the race, but McDaniel. He's got a very intense following that will go vote for him, even if it's a snowstorm on August the 8th in Mississippi. But listen, much like Tate Reeves has over Brandon Presley, Delbert Hosemann has a tremendous 10-to-1 cash advantage over McDaniel, and that matters. That means he being Delbert Hosemann, is delivering his message to voters on TV, on digital, on mail, and phones. And that's, he's whatever voters that may have been. I don't really, have an opinion about Delbert Hosemann, or maybe I'm wishy-washy on him. He's trying to solidify them. That makes it difficult for McDaniels to try to find a way of getting to his 50% plus one. It's hard to handicap that race besides saying I think that Hosemann is the favorite in the race. There's no question. But McDaniel has a chance. But he better find some money and start spending it on television very quickly, just to be candid.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If you almost get the feeling that what is going to be, unless something happens between now and August, because unless something comes up, he increases his advertising, or there's somebody who stumbles, that whatever the vote is going to be on that day, it is now, and nothing's going to change.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly true in the governor's race. Brandon Presley needs Tate Reeves to make a mistake. And one of the things that I know about Governor Reeves is he is a very disciplined candidate. He's so smart. He's so well thought of. He's such a policy guy. He doesn't make unforced errors.
Final segment's coming up in a moment or two with Austin Barbour. How does the Neshoba County Fair play into this? We'll get a guy who's... Have you missed any fairs lately, by the way?
I'm sure at some point in time. I don't remember.
All right. How will the Neshoba County Fair play into this? Austin Barbour, when we return, final segment coming up next. If you couldn't elect anybody else on the GOP lineup now, and Trump wasn't running, is there anybody else from your mind you would love to see jump into the race?
I think that the interesting one who is not in the race right now that may is Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia. He is, Virginia's a tough state, and I do a good bit of political work in Virginia. It's a tough state for a Republican to win in 2023, and he obviously did that 2 years ago. He is a really smart guy, great business success story.
You're talking about the governor.
I'm talking about the governor, Governor Youngkin of Virginia. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And I say he is someone who could potentially jump in late, mostly because he's independently wealthy and could fund a campaign late. I don't really see anybody else out there that could get in the race and have a chance to win. Listen, here's what we know. There are 2 tickets right now, and that's DeSantis and that's Trump. I think there's a 3rd lane and a 4th lane for somebody. It could be Asa Hutchinson. It could be Tim Scott. It could be Nikki Haley. It could be Glenn Youngkin. It could be somebody else who's going to pick that 3rd and 4th spot in the debates. They're gonna be positioned ahead, and then coming out of the Iowa caucuses headed towards New Hampshire.
How can you make the base so mad? What has he got now? 60-70% of the 50 to 60% as far as Trump is concerned.
You're saying
how does Asa or Chris Christie be so anti Donald Trump and even retain some of that base?
Well, I think Christie has a different playbook than Asa Hutchinson. Chris Christie has been anti Donald Trump since Trump left office. I think Asa Hutchinson is more talking about the issues as of late, which is the indictment, which Nikki Haley, who never says anything negative about Donald Trump, finally did yesterday about the indictment. So, but listen, you ask a really good question. How does someone like that have a chance to criticize Trump and then effectively become the nominee? A lot of things have to happen between now and then for that to happen, to give them that opportunity, and we're just not there yet.
If you and I were going to pick a candidate to say, all right, how are we going to handle the media? How are you going to handle all of these investigations? How are you going to handle the storms that we have in politics today? And kind of with the Ronald Reagan humor, my guy would be John Kennedy from Louisiana. I think he could handle it with little Southern wisdom, and he has he's got the intelligence to do it.
Yeah, he certainly has his own way with the press. But listen, as you remember, go back to 2004 when Bush won re-election. The press, that's when I really started paying attention of. My gosh, the national press hates Republicans. And I dealt with it on Governor Romney's campaign in 2012, and obviously we've seen it against Trump with just about everything he does, good, bad, or indifferent.
Well, and look, if Trump is out, they're going to turn that whole
whoever the nominee is,
nuclear arsenal against DeSantis.
But the most important thing to realize is, and I hear some of my friends who are big Trump supporters say, well, this is an effort by the Biden administration to try to get Trump off the ticket. I see this differently. I honestly think Trump is the only person running as a Republican right now who I think Biden wants to run against. I think Biden his team at least sees him as the individual that they can beat just because of how swing voters, independents view Donald Trump.
President Biden apparently was not going to even have a debate. I think they've said that they probably won't have a debate out there, so that's unbelievable. Should there be a debate between Brandon Presley and Tate Reeves?
Oh yeah, I think so, absolutely. And
will there be?
I don't know. I'd be shocked to not see at least one, maybe two. Mm-hmm. But yeah, absolutely, they're the nominees, serious nominees of their parties, and I do think there'll be a debate in October.
Same thing for the lieutenant governor.
Yeah, I would think so. At least one. Yeah. But we'll have to see. You're talking about obviously the Republican primary, not the general election.
Yeah,
because I don't even know if there is a Democrat running for lieutenant governor. Maybe there is. But listen, the Neshoba County Fair. You mentioned that before we went off last segment. Right. That is going to be a very interesting fair because of the LG's race. Especially to see and watch the lieutenant governor's speech there. McDaniel, who doesn't represent that area, and he's not a statewide elected official, I assume does not have a speaking slot at the fair, but certainly his supporters will be there.
It's going to be a good one. One way or the other.
Absolutely. And just dress coolly and bring plenty of water, Paul, as you know.
Any final thoughts?
Not for me. It'll be an interesting year watching these debates and then looking forward to the Iowa caucuses soon enough.
How long do you think this is going to go on as far as the adjudication process of these indictments? Because will it go all the way through and they just want bad luggage, or will they arrive at something sooner?
You better ask my friend Lucian Smith, who's a lawyer, that question.
And we'll give him the tough ones. Good job, man. Thank you. I've enjoyed the visit. Austin Barbour.